What if your waking life is also a dream? And what if lucid dreaming held the key to mastering waking life? Blending Neville Goddard's teachings with neuroscience and mystical practice, Shveta explores why becoming aware is not the same as becoming the author, and why so many of us, even seasoned conscious creators, still feel surprised, stuck, or confused by our reality. You'll learn how dreams mirror your unconscious patterns, why everyone is you pushed out, and how that still applies even when you're shocked by what you see. If you've ever felt like you know the teachings, but still wonder why your outer world does not fully reflect your inner work, this is the conversation that connects the missing dots. To go deeper, join the School of Imagination on Discord. The invite link is in the video description. And if you're ready to train as a reality author and learn the mechanics of the reality simulation through a deep dive into simulation mastery, consider joining our next live cohort of Brave Mystic training, starting soon. Link is in the description. Let's begin this journey into the logic of dreams, the mystery of states, and the power of remembering who is really writing the script. This is DreamLogic.
Welcome back to DreamLogic. For anyone new, I'm Shveta, and last week we practiced remembering together. There were like little remembering reps that I had put together last week. It's like reality checks, the spinning technique, charging various objects. And today, this week's episode, I want to talk about some of the things I've been diving deep into in lucid dreaming research, because I had even more questions about how these mechanics might work and what we might be able to learn from the world of lucid dreaming as those who are creating our reality in the shared dream that we live in. I've been exploring and researching answers to questions like, do lucid dreamers have to play along with their dream script? Like, meaning, do lucid dreamers perform better when they're playing along with their dream versus when they try to break their dream? What happens to dream characters when someone in a lucid dream becomes lucid? Does lucidity seem to make positive outcomes more likely, or not so much? And why do we forget we're dreaming? And the crucial distinction, what's the difference between being aware that you're dreaming and actually being able to control the dream? Wanted to see, based on the mainstream research that we have, what some of the evidence might be pointing out to. So I want to share the research I found and see how it applies to our waking authorship practice. Because it turns out there's a wealth of scientific data about lucid dreaming that can inform how we approach conscious creation in daily life. And as usual, if anyone who's listening live has questions, please feel free to ask in the chat and we'll make some time as we can. So to start off with the basics of the science of lucid dreaming, there's a gentleman named Stephen LaBerge who is one of the main voices of lucid dreaming. He got his PhD from Stanford in 1980, and he basically proved that lucid dreaming is real. The fact that we now agree that's a real phenomenon and it's not sort of in the camp of pseudoscience, I believe, is because of his experiments. He figured out how to become aware inside of dreams on purpose and then developed what's called the MILD technique. It's MILD, MILD technique. And that stands for mnemonic induction of lucid dreams. It essentially, it sounds fancy, but what it really is using memory tricks to remember you're dreaming while you're dreaming. So it's a little memory trick that, for example, like before sleep, you repeat to yourself, next time I'm dreaming, I'll remember I'm dreaming. It's like an intention. It's like an affirmation. So this mild technique that Stephen LaBerge created is like an intention or affirmation that you're using to program your mind to wake up inside the dream. And as you know, in a lucid dream, the point of you being lucid is that you know you're dreaming while it's happening. You realize the experience is coming from you, your consciousness, and it's not from anything happening in what you consider the physical reality around your sleeping body. It's an interesting thing. I have to say, I have not been lucid, certainly not intentionally before in my life. A couple weeks ago, I mentioned how rare this practice can be. And I also learned since then, yes, it is rare, but there are apps and there's technology that exists now that is actually making lucid dreaming more accessible and improving, people's attempts at lucid dreaming, which is really cool. But it's still a new science. People are still starting to learn about it, but it's key that we realize that it's new, it's rare, and that Stephen LaBerge is and I'll put his name in the chat. Stephen LaBerge. So I might be butchering this pronunciation, but because even with some Canadian French under my belt, that's a hard name to pronounce for me for some reason. But yes, here's how LaBerge was a key source in all of this, because he essentially proved that lucid dreaming was real and not just something people were making up. Before going to sleep, dreamers agreed to move their eyes in a specific pattern, like left, right, over and over again. So a simple pattern, the moment they realized they were dreaming. And so while they slept, scientists watched their actual eye movements with machines. When the dreamers woke up and said, "I moved my eyes like this when I became lucid," the recorded eye movements matched exactly what they reported doing in the dream. It's a really interesting study that I tried to understand and simplify in my mind, because essentially what he was able to prove is that people who became lucid, or who claimed that they were lucid and became lucid, were able to control their eye movement in the dream. It proved that consciousness can actually wake up inside a dream, or a more awake version of consciousness can wake up inside a dream, and then communicate with the outside world by moving their eyes in a certain way. So it was a measurable proof that lucid dreaming was a legitimate activity, that awareness can become conscious of itself deeply in sleep. And so my first question that was important for me to want to look into is, do lucid dreamers actually have to play along with what's happening in the dream? Like, let's say I find myself in a storyline. Is it better for me to have to play along with it and go along with a storyline? And what happens to lucid dreamers when they don't, when they decide to take a completely sharp left and pivot to doing or experiencing something different? And the research showed some mixed results. Most of the time when we're dreaming, we have no idea that we're dreaming. And of course, that's why lucid dreaming is a skill. When you become lucid, you can often influence what happens next, because you're aware that you're dreaming. There's this increased ability to try and start to influence. But here's the key, and we've talked about this across the weeks, is that lucidity, while being an extremely important key, probably the primary key, that control, that authorship is a different skill, because it's not automatic. Research indicates that lucid dreamers can achieve varying degrees of control over their dreams, but the control requires skill and practice, like practicing and strengthening a muscle. The dream seems to have its own momentum that you can work with or resist, and that requires skill and practice. And this is something I found really interesting, because I'd had this intuitive nudge recently to try to work on myself and what I see as my natural intelligence operating system, so my node of consciousness, and try to make it strong and robust and practice and develop skill rather than being outcome focused and trying to control what happens in the dream. I've had this intuitive nudge to like focus inwards and just develop the skill and practice of state endurance and identity, like essentially focusing on the inside, which is interesting because that's what it sounds like the various lucid dreamers who are starting to try to achieve degrees of control over their dream. They're saying the same thing. They're saying this is a skill, it's a practice, it doesn't always happen the way you think it does, and there's an existing momentum already at play. There's an existing momentum in the dream that you can choose to work with, resist, or rewrite. And I was like continuing to apply this to our conscious creation in this shared dream, in this shared dream reality. When you remember you're the author in the middle of a situation, when you realize, okay, actually I know that I'm creating this. I am the author. I am creating this entire reality. I'm generating it. I'm selecting it from the infinite library of options. Do you have to completely, do you abandon the script completely that was playing in your reality? Or are you working with it? Are you working with the momentum of the dream while gently redirecting it? And while the research is mixed, it seems to start to suggest that some people work, and in some situations, working with the dream's flow often gives better results. And in other situations, completely shifting, and pivoting seems to really work. And I thought that was really neat. It's not a extremely direct answer, but it goes to show us that the way that we experience authorship in our waking reality, there is an existing momentum, and we can work with it or against it. And gaining lucidity that, hey, I am creating this. That's the first step. And then deciding what's next, what feels safest and most available to you is kind of the second step. It's neat because I've noticed this in my own practice over the years. When I shift into author consciousness, but try to force changes in my life and try to overfit into obsessive nature of a desire, things often become more chaotic. But when I acknowledge what's happening and then have this gentle approach, this sort of gentle redirection from within the situation, there seems to be more stability. And exploring DreamLogic with this, lucid dreaming as a context for waking reality, it makes me realize it's because I'm maintaining stability. And a shared construct dream likes stability, maintaining stability while still authoring consciously. There's something to it. There's something to that. Carrie says, I have noticed this as well. Yes. It's something I'm realizing because I used to be what I would consider someone I consider a mentor said that people often have a style of burning things down to create something new, or some people have that style, and I have to say that's something I've done. I'm going to say for most of my life, that I wanted to pivot. I wanted to destroy something to create something new. And in, let's say, the last 7 years or so, I've started to learn the skill of bridging my current reality to something new and not seeing the current experience as a curse. And I think that's what this is kind of pointing to, is the current experience that we have right now could be the very bridge, and we can treat it as a bridge to where we're going. And that stability that we bring to the situation by not rejecting our reality might actually help us author. Sarah says, or asks, would the sense of momentum be more evident for us when we are in control mode? For example, the control itself is creating it. That depends what you mean by the word control and how you're defining that. The word control is if you mean in terms of feeling in control of the situation because you're confident, you're secure in the situation, you've done this before, so there's training data and the feedback loop has momentum, then yes, if you're in that place, then there's a momentum and you have self-trust. But if you're talking about control, well, control as resistance to what is. So yes, exactly. When you're over controlling. So in this case, if you're over controlling something, that is resistance to what is. And when you say, would the sense of momentum be more evident for us, it can feel like resistance. It can feel like resistance, like going against the stream. But sometimes there's a time and place for that. If there's so much momentum going in the opposite direction, and there's no you can kind of sense that you need to cut ties with this situation and rebuild. I think in that case, you're taking, it's not really control, it's taking, regaining authorship there. But yeah, the word control, I think, trips me up a little. So hopefully I answered your question there. But if not, let me know, because I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Because momentum is a key systems principle. And I think it's something we have to kind of consider when we're starting to create something new in our reality. We're not often starting from a blank slate. I even think that's true for babies that come in here. I don't think even babies start with blank slates. So we're coming in here with a structure within us that we are then, and we're in this shared dream construct with existing momentum. So it is key that we get an awareness of what we're already playing into and what we've already subscribed to. Okay. I always kind of reiterate this because I see this as a very important finding, that being aware that you're dreaming and being able to control the dream are two completely different skills. Research consistently has shown that uncontrolled lucid dreams are more common than controlled ones. So it's very possible while lucid dreaming to be fully aware you're dreaming and then struggle to direct what happens in the dream. I'm sure you can see the parallels with waking reality conscious creators. Most lucid dreams involve awareness without that control, because a lot of the time that second skill, the secondary skill of authorship and controlling the dream, and if I say controlled, see, I'm using that word again, but I meant to say authored, that's a better term here. You can fully be aware you are dreaming, but still struggle to author the dream. And this maps perfectly onto our waking life. We know that knowing that you're the author doesn't always automatically make us skilled at state endurance, persistence, being able to see multiple probabilities and possibilities, non-reaction. Those are sort of a separate set of abilities. And so in our daily reality, we have to start to cultivate both. So moments of clear awareness, and then also practice that muscle, that skill of skillfully redirecting ourselves from reaction to creation. That's why the remembering practice is so important, and that's why we're gonna, in Brave Mystic training, and actually just in general in anything I do in my life, a big portion of the day's inputs, and the inputs that we give to ourselves will be remembering, like repetition of remembering. And then we will practice the muscle and the skill of imagining as well, but there's going to be the both sides. Ariel says, lucidity sounds like theoretical science, and authoring sounds like practicing skills. As the one is a lab of exploration, that way the level of embodiment grows. I love that, Ariel, and I would want to invite you to sort of think that the word theoretical and lab, that's sort of relative. And I say that because what if we are the lab, the theoretical science lab, a lab of exploration as well, in this waking reality. So we got our sleeping reality where we're saying, hey, that's theoretical and that's just practicing skills. And, that's a lab. And then we're saying in our waking shared reality that's the real world. I want to point out that that's just a point of reference. We're in this shared dream, so we consider that theoretical, you know what I mean? And that like a lab of exploration. But maybe if we awakened from this dream, we would see this as the lab of exploration. That this was the practicing skills, arena. And Carrie says, that's where nervous system sovereignty comes in. It always comes in. It always comes in. It's like, and these are, I sort of see the nervous system sovereignty as the term for the two skills I talk about in lucid dreaming and DreamLogic, which is the remembering and then the skilled muscle of state endurance. So yes, lots to be said there. Okay. And then the other thing I wanted to look into is in lucid dreaming, what happens to dream characters when people become lucid in their dreams? Like, how do dream characters respond to lucid dreamers when the people become lucid in their dream? Like, how does their dream character respond to that? And so, research and anecdotal reports suggest that dream characters sometimes resist your lucidity. They may create convincing arguments to make you think that the dream is real. When you start questioning reality in a dream, your brain can come up with ways to convince you that what you're experiencing is definitely real. Some lucid dreamers report wild experiences like dream characters insisting, oh no, this is a dream. This is not a dream. I actually have dreams too. I'm real. So they're insisting that they also have dreams, that they're real as well, or claiming that the dreamer is actually part of the character's dream. I mean, the boundaries of who's creating what can apparently become completely blurred. Others report that dream characters in nightmares claim that waking life is the dream while the nightmare itself is real. So, I mean, these are individual reports that we were able to find. It's not like there's lots of systematic research in this question that I have, which is what happens to dream characters when you become lucid and interact with them. But it goes to show you that even in your mad solo dream that you're sleeping in every night, even in that dream, you're the NPCs in that dream and the people pushed out in that dream are like, no, actually, this you're not dreaming. This is real. Like, they still put up a fight, which I find very funny, and it kind of inspired me to be like, okay, that means my waking reality is not like it. The point of it isn't so that people reveal that they're automatons. Like, that's not the point of any of this. Like, it's not me knowing that these are me pushed out. That doesn't entitle me to like having them respond completely like the way I would expect. Because even in a solo sleeping dream, when I see all of these visions of people, they're putting up a fight. They're saying, no, this is really a dream. And I've actually had this happen where I wasn't lucid exactly. I mean, I wasn't trying to be, but I was in a dream and I was questioning, is this a dream? That I've done a few times where I'm not 100% sold that this is a dream, but I'm like questioning, like, this is a dream, right? In the dream. And the people in the dream are like, no. They look at me like I'm crazy. They react like I would in waking life, which I think is so funny. I just find it very entertaining. Kathy asks, what are NPCs? Yes, Stasio, non-playable character. So when I say that, I think it has a negative connotation, and sometimes these words do. Like, even the word muggles, I think it's a very apt term, but it sounds kind of rude and insulting. And so I don't mean it in a negative way. What I mean is, in the Neville ontology, so the way that Neville views this reality, and in the way that we at Brave Mystic Training, with School of Imagination, the way we view it is that consciousness is primordial, first cause, and that has some implications. So each one of us are rooted within the other, and in each of our reality, this is something that we believe as well, that we live in something like a multi-solipsistic but multiplayer reality. So we each individual are operant power of our reality, and everyone else is as well. So no one that you engage with, should we be treating them like an NPC? They're an expression of you at the end of the day. But I just find it interesting that in dream space, when you're going to sleep, which we consider the sleeping reality, the solo mad reality that Neville would say, that when you go to sleep, it's like the maddest reality. But in our shared dream, because it's multiplayer in this level, there are more shared physics. There's a timeline that is shared. There's several things that make it somewhat different. But in the solo dream, those characters are like, no, they're putting up a fight. They will seem real, which I find very interesting. Ariel says, non-playable characters, those that are not the main character, like the shopkeeper in a video game. Exactly. Now, the shopkeeper in a video game could be a character, I guess. Like, I don't play video games, but like you could like pick, right? In the next round of the game, you could pick that character, shopkeeper, in the video game, and then the other main character that you were before, that will be the NPC in your game as the shopkeeper. So we can all step into temporary NPC and muggle mode exactly when we lose sight of our lucidity and we forget we're authors. That's right, Ariel. In fact, that's the whole game here, is try not to act like such a darn NPC all the time. Okay. So I've mentioned how lucid dreamers report wild experiences with dream characters insisting that they're real, and others report dream characters that are in their nightmares claiming that waking life is the dream. So there's all kinds of things that can happen here, and what is documented in nightmare therapy research is when lucid dreamers learn to confront or even embrace their scary dream figures instead of running away, those threatening elements often, not always, often dissolve and transform into something helpful. So there's this experience that's often had that the dream character's responses might reflect the dreamer's own internal relationships to their power and awareness. So just give me actually just 1 second. I'm having a tech thing. I'll be right back. All good. Crisis averted. Kathy asks, can you define muggle? Oh boy. Yes, I shouldn't just be using pop culture terms without explaining the reference. It is a Harry Potter non-magical being, as Ariel said. It's part of the Harry Potter universe and is essentially those that don't possess magic. And to be fair, that's not what we believe here. We believe every single soul fragment, humans, I believe animals and non-living things, anything that you could ever experience that has a point of view, it's a creative source. It's part of creative source. And anything with a feedback loop is creative in nature. Yes. Not a very official SOI term or brave mystic term. We don't use muggle that often. Okay. So, interestingly, like I was saying, in nightmare therapy research, when lucid dreamers confront or embrace scary dream creatures instead of running away, those threatening elements often dissolve and can give them important clues so that they can heal and actually overcome that nightmare, because a lot of nightmares are recurring and that can be really difficult for people to sleep through. That can really affect people's qualities of life. So there's research and to help people overcome their nightmares, and the way they do that is by facing their fears, which is really interesting. And so when you shift into author consciousness and waking reality, how do people around you respond? Could their responses be reflecting your own internal beliefs about your authority? And this is something that happens a lot. It's part of the name of the game, at least in my experience, that when I shift realities and states, when I shift a state, my dream characters in my waking reality often challenge me. They often say things to trigger my old self. They often seem to say things that challenge my new state. And that is a fundamental dynamic in my waking reality experience. And so that's why it's interesting to consider. Perhaps just like in your lucid dream when you're sleeping, these responses are not meant to be taken so literally. They're just fighting for their it's almost like the dream is fighting back in a way, like the momentum of the dream is fighting back in a way, and we just take that as reflections of our internal beliefs, like lucid dreamers do, rather than needing them to prove anything. Because I've noticed when I'm in author consciousness, that doesn't always mean I don't have a little doubt about my power. So it's kind of a mixed bag. I'm in author consciousness, but I have some doubt about my power. People absolutely challenge me more, especially in areas where either I have negative momentum or I have existing feedback loops that contradict what I desire and contradict my state. Exactly, an old echo. And I started to look into this other question I'd had, which is, does lucidity seem to make positive outcomes more likely? My question really was, when people become lucid in lucid dreams, do they seem to have more positive outcomes right away? Like, does the dream go in a positive angle? Or does it stay the same? Or does it get worse? Like, I was curious what happens when people start to awaken to who they are. We know that lucidity alone does not guarantee positive outcomes, and studies looking at lucid dreaming communities have found both benefits and potential problems. Some people experience reality confusion, and they have a little bit of difficulty, like trouble, distinguishing between dreams and waking life. And others have experienced series of false awakenings where they thought they woke up, but they were still dreaming. And it's really interesting because the skills, and I'm going to get into this, I have like a list of skills of what makes somebody a solid lucid dreamer, where they can attain lucidity a few times a month and sustain that state endurance. Those skills are so applicable to our waking reality. But I found it interesting that just because you become a better lucid dreamer doesn't necessarily mean you're psychologically better off. And I wanted to bring this up because it brought something up for me, that when you are on this path and you're looking to create something new, there are healthy ways to do this and unhealthy ways. You know, lucid dreamers go into this with the best of intentions and can create marvelous experiences. But for some people, this has caused depersonalization, derealization. They've had false awakenings. They're not sure what's real, what's fake. And I think that's something that we should be honest about, that in consciousness expansion modalities, you know, when you're deep in imaginal work, deep in even meditation, when you're doing things like lucid dreaming, maybe astral projection, that there is a structured, healthy way of doing something, because we don't want to be in a position where we're having trouble distinguishing what's the difference between the different realms that we are. I mean, we have our sleeping reality, which we talked about, that being the solo mad reality. That's perfect for what it is. We don't want that bleeding into our waking reality and we're confused about what's what. In the same way, when we do deep imaginal work, we want to do this in a healthy way that can actually sustain itself in all levels of wakedness. And I hope that this is landing, because that's what I wanted to get out here, is that lucid dreaming, there's all kinds of unique use cases, all kinds of things that you can learn and grow using lucid dreaming. And same with conscious creation and manifestation. And there are healthy and unhealthy ways to go about it, that we should keep in mind. Kathy says, if dream is showing you something you may not see during waking reality, is it necessary to try and shift it? Or is it better to just remember and then learn from it? Oh. If a dream is showing you something you may not see, can you tell me what you mean by that a bit more? Is it necessary to try and shift it, or better just to remember and learn from it? To answer your second part of your question, I actually, I have had this kind of recently, I think from what you're asking, where I was like, do I want to go in and revise something? Or do I just want to have that be as a memory, and like a memory that sort of stings or warns me of something, and then move on? And I picked the latter. I did not want to go in and revise the thing. I just wanted to let it be what it was, and then, let me move forward from it. Because imaginal work is a skill and a practice, and it can take effort. Ariel says, I'd love to hear more about false awakenings in both sleep and waking life. There's so much. I kind of started researching about this very thing, Ariel. I can absolutely bring that up next Friday, bring some of that up. I think with all consciousness practices, not all practices work for everyone's unique operating system. Yes. Fine-tuning to discover what works for you individually for your own fascia and blueprint is so important. Exactly. I completely agree with that. I think that makes perfect sense. And that's the whole point of having natural intelligence. This natural intelligence operating system. The natural intelligence, depending on your background, depending on all kinds of data that make you in this reality. That is your signature, your soul signature, all kinds of data and structures within you. So of course, I've never felt a pull to astral projection. I've never felt a pull to even honestly lucid dreaming. I like it as a concept because I love the research that comes from it. Comes from this, and the fact that this is a shared dream and that's a solo dream. I love learning from it, but it's not been something I've been, desperately committed to, like a lot of people say, and probably for reasons that make sense to me and my soul. Sasia says, out of pure curiosity, maybe a bit off topic, but do you also find that when there's a full moon, your dreams feel wilder or more vivid? I have not found that. I have not made that connection. But Kathleen says, yes, very much. Maybe I need to pay more attention to that. I just notice all my dreams always feel wild. Maybe I need to write something about this, but since I've been experimenting more with even just starting to slightly get more lucid in reality, I notice that when I wake up now that I'm doing some journaling, I am so much more aware of all of the impressions that I had at my night. I can't explain it. Something happened now where when I wake up, I feel this deep awareness of all the sensory impressions that I felt when I was sleeping. I don't know the storyline. I just know the sensory impressions, and it's strange. It's dialed up to 1,000 now. But yes, Kathy said, I had what I think is a lucid dream, and I was just aware that I was in it. And then I wrote it down, and there was a huge correlation between my waking reality and what the dream was showing me. Oh, wow. I am enjoying remembering and being alive in my dream, and then afterwards analyzing the dream. That's so cool. I think you're bringing this all together. You're bringing this to life, Kathy, with that. Yes. If you were aware that you were dreaming in a dream, that's you becoming lucid. And there was some really interesting comments in last week's lucid dreaming YouTube video where I was explaining how I'm starting to see that lucid dreaming is lucidity in general is like a gradient. It's not an on or off switch. There's when you become lucid, you can become lucid in a very vivid way, or it can be a little dulled. It can be multi-sensory, or it can be kind of more one note. It's so many ways to be lucid, and it's a gradient. So I'm sure, if you had awareness that you were dreaming, then you were. And the fact that there was a correlation between waking reality and what the dream was showing me, that shows you what's alive within you. The fact that there's that overlap. Super cool. And so, yes, I wanted to say that, the idea that people are successfully lucid dreaming and having different experiences in their sleeping reality that tell them who they are, and then they can go on the forums and share, that doesn't always mean, healthy and happy outcomes. In that same way, just knowing you're creating your experience doesn't often make life easier or more pleasant. There's still that hard work and the weeds to dig up and things to plant and create. What we're doing here is gaining increased responsibility for what we're creating, getting better at remembering and putting more remembering reps in, and practicing imagination and like imaginal acts and practicing state endurance like a muscle. And that changes on a daily basis. It's like multi-leveled. So with every level of increased awareness, you see more of your internal contradictions, internal resistance. So I see that this is almost like a never-ending journey. And then the sort of like question that I realized I had taken for granted for so long is, why do we even forget that we're dreaming when we're sleeping? It just seems so strange. Why do we forget we're dreaming in the first place? So research shows that during REM sleep, the part of our brain that's responsible for self-reflection and decision-making becomes less active. This area is crucial for maintaining awareness of who am I and what's happening right now. And when it's dampened during dreams, we lose the ability to question our experience, and we lose the ability to remember our waking reality. When lucidity happens, something fascinating occurs in the brain. And scientists can see that on brain scans that lucid dreaming creates a hybrid state. It's not fully asleep like normal dreaming, and it's not fully awake either. The parts of your brain that handle self-awareness become more active than they do in regular dreams, but the rest of your brain stays in dream mode. It's like having one foot in each world. People who have lucid dreams frequently show increased connections between brain regions associated with self-reflection and understanding internal states. Their brains literally develop stronger networks for awareness. And to me, what this suggests for our waking reality and conscious creation of this waking reality is that forgetting where the author might work similarly. Certain brain patterns and cultural conditioning like dampens our awareness. Like certain aspects of our reality get dampened. And just like lucid dreamers can train their brains to remember within dreams, we can train ourselves to remember our authorship in waking experiences. It just started to suggest that to me, that this is a skill that we can increase, and that hybrid state where we're kind of in between two worlds might be something we can bring into this waking reality. Kathy said, I have never done that before, meaning lucid dreaming, but it was directly after your conversation on lucid dreams when I took a nap right after. Oh, that's really cool. Yes, I'm noticing my dreams are, like, the way that I dream now is changing. Something fundamental is happening. The more I think and talk about this, the more I learn about this. Ariel says, someone should make a wearable or watch for lucidity and authorship levels. That is really cool. That does not sound that far-fetched, actually, because it's something scientists were able to measure in brainwave state. So how cool would that be? Ariel says, that's amazing timing. Can you speak to the analogy that correlates to waking life? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I read your mind. Yeah, no, it's interesting because I think there's a lot of analogies. Neville said that this is worlds within worlds within worlds. It's dreams within dreams within dreams. And it's you all the way down. Just different aspects of us being expressed out there. In sleeping reality, solo dream. In shared waking reality, shared dream. The dreaming in concert, as Neville would put it. Josiah says, I've seen devices in biohacker communities that are along these lines. Lucid induction technology. Yes, that's what I was speaking to, that I've seen apps and there seem to be promising and increasing this as a skill, which is so interesting. Can't wait to see what the future holds. Another thing that the research revealed that I found really interesting is that it's strong emotions, the power of strong emotions. Strong emotions can knock you out of lucidity even if you're a very experienced lucid dreamer. Studies have found that dreaming and waking actually have similar amounts of reflection and choice, but when strong fear anger, or excitement arise in lucid dreams, dreamers often lose their awareness and fall back into the dream script. So it's the strong emotions in lucid dreaming that screw up someone's remembering. They slip back into the dream and forget who they are. I thought that was really cool and interesting to consider that, hey, you know what? This is mapping out to our waking reality, because knowing we author our reality has not been, just knowing that intellectually has not been helpful for me to stop my nervous system from firing. That's nervous system sovereignty again, where we need that. It doesn't stop your nervous system from firing when you're triggered to be just intellectually aware. Strong emotions can and do often drop us back into reactive pattern. And intellectually knowing better doesn't seem to help. But it's encouraging to know, the research is encouraging, because in nightmare therapy research, when lucid dreamers learn to maintain awareness, they're practicing the skill while maintaining awareness while facing their fears. The fears transform and dissolve, and people get better and better at it. So even in the face of their nightmares, when lucid dreamers started to become aware of who they are and shift, there is that pattern breakage. So I see that as, it's okay if we see things that trigger our emotions, but just as lucid dreamers are able to face the nightmarish quality of their dream with awareness, we can do that too. We need to just maintain a thread of awareness and emotional intensity and learn to face our fears, just like the lucid dreamers do. In terms of false awakenings, Ariel, you said earlier, what was your question? I think I saw something. Can't find it now, but there was a question that you'd had about false awakening, I think, right? So that's another phenomenon that offers insight into all of this. Yes, I'd love to hear about false awakenings in both sleep and waking life. Exactly. So false awakening is when you dream that you wake up, but you're actually still dreaming. You might dream you get out of bed, brush your teeth, eat breakfast, and start your day, but then you actually suddenly wake up and realize that the whole morning routine was a dream. So this is a phenomenon that can happen in lucid dreaming. And some people experience multiple false awakenings, one after the other. And research has documented cases of people experiencing many consecutive false awakenings. So what's fascinating about this is how these relate to lucidity. And recent studies found that people who experience both false awakenings, like I described, and lucid dreams often show connections between the two. It's like you're starting to become lucid, but there's that snap back. It's like you're almost there, but you snapped back into sleep. And apparently it's kind of like a bridge to becoming lucid. So that's reassuring as well. Because the more you recognize that was a false awakening, that's actually a form of lucidity. So from what I understand, people who experience false awakenings often are able to overcome that and experience more lucidity. It's like the more aware you are that was a false awakening, the more lucidity you bring to that situation, if that makes sense. And so the connection of that into our waking reality is intriguing. It's like, how often do we think we've woken up to our creative power, and then we find ourselves smack dab in the middle of our old patterns? How many times do we have to remember before that remembering sticks, where we find ourselves, oh crap, no, actually I was acting from my old state here again. False awakenings might just be showing us something. There's a layered nature of consciousness. Our natural instinct and the default programming and setting is to lull us back to sleep. And really, we're sustaining that awakening and remembering. That's the skill there. It's really an exciting time if you're interested in anything to do with consciousness studies and research and science, because I can speak to lucid dreaming specifically, that the field is advancing rapidly. A groundbreaking 2024 study at Northwestern University showed that a smartphone app using sound cues can significantly increase lucid dream frequency. Participants used an app, and I'm going to find this app. I don't have it in my notes. I want to find this app that played specific sounds to create an association between those sounds and lucid awareness. And the study found lucid dreaming frequency increased from an average of 0.74 dreams per week, so less than 1, to 2 dreams per week when using the app. This is a small study, but that is a nearly 3-fold increase. And so this is one of the first times that researchers successfully applied lucid dreaming techniques outside a laboratory setting. And the study used something called targeted lucidity reactivation, which all of these techniques, by the way, they really sound like that lucid dreamers use. They sound like imaginal techniques. They're talking about affirmations, intentions, rehearsals, which is imagining. That's what they're saying. They're saying pre-sleep, so state akin to sleep, ritual that include intentions and affirmations. So you can see that there is so much overlap, because at the end of the day, when we're talking about lucidity, it's a skill across both spaces, both in sleeping reality and waking reality. And when we're talking about creation and authorship, it's a skill in both areas, whether you're trying to dissolve a nightmare in sleeping reality to create something pleasant, or you're doing that in waking reality, changing your circumstances. Wizard of Wild. Whenever I have nightmares, it is always involving terrible things happening to other people, and I'm powerless to stop it. I seem to have an inherent confidence in my own safety, even in the dream state. But I experience the inability to help others as a terrifying failure. I'm wondering how this fits with everyone is you pushed out, though. I love this question, and I really appreciate that, because that means you're seeing a pattern. And my question to you, you don't have to answer it here, would be, is that something that happens in waking reality as well, where you have a hard time feeling like you're pulling other people into safety? That would be something I would be curious. Or is that kind of opposite of what your waking experience is? That would be interesting to consider there. The second thing is, I certainly have the themes of my waking reality come as in my sleeping reality, where there's an inability, flat out inability to engage with others the way I want to. I have like humiliating experiences that happen from childhood and things like that, and yeah, it's terrible things that are happening, and it's a sort of a social dynamic, almost like you're speaking to, but it sounds like yours is about other people's safety in your dream. So, but I had a similar kind of thing, and the way that fits with the everyone is you pushed out is really the whole basis of everything I'm talking about in DreamLogic, which is that stuff that you're experiencing in your sleeping reality is all you, and it still shocks, astonishes you, is telling you something about yourself in an abstract way. In our shared reality, that everyone is you pushed out is even more complex, because as Neville would say, while we're all rooted within each other, who we experience out there, we're experiencing it with a shared, we all decided to dream in concert. Imagine we decided to dream in concert in a shared dream. So in our sleeping reality, we're like, I can't save you. And that's we have to think of where's that coming from? And in our waking reality, it's like that, but in a shared construct that's lasting a lifetime. So everyone is you pushed out in both spaces, but even without the complication of other people when you're sleeping, it's still wild. It's still shocking. It can still be confusing. And there's a lot more where this came from, because one of the things I started researching, went deep into, is, for example, people who are either blind or deaf, they can't hear. Well, how do they dream? What happens when they get lucid? What are they creating in their sleeping dreams? I learned so much about how the parameters of this conscious creation thing. So perhaps what I'll do is next in either the next episode or the episode after that, we'll flesh it out more about how this fits with how everything out there is a reflection of you, both in the sleeping reality where you're lucid dreaming and in this waking reality. Josiah says, a Woken app does that. You set it to chime throughout the day and night. It also prompts you each morning to journal your dreams, either in text and recording. That's really cool. And really what I notice is that people who actually do the thing, like adhere to the thing, get the results. Mostly in a lot of these studies and actually in a lot of the experiments, it's hard to get people to adhere to the simple practices. So I think like it's something that I would try and then actually commit to. If you're interested in the actual practice. Stasio says, my advice, if you usually fall asleep around 11 p.m., you can simply set alarm at the right interval, let's say every 2 hours, with a custom ringtone. That way you'll meet all the conditions for lucid dreaming. Yeah. Okay. There's a lot of ways to go about this. And to be honest, there's a ton of information out there. My angle in all of this is to look at the research of what we're learning about how to create and remember in this. Because I see that as not only so many parallels, but I think it holds a secret about this shared dream construct. And the last thing I'll do before I wrap up here is, you know how earlier I was saying that dream characters sometimes resist the dreamer's lucidity and will be like, actually, no, you aren't dreaming. This is real. This reminded me of something that Neville shared. He shared a principle where you tell no man. So Neville Goddard essentially emphasized that it's probably a best practice for us not to share what we truly desire with those around us. He advised keeping your practices private until they had fully materialized. And so I kind of see that there's an interesting lucid dream logic basis for this advice. Because in the same way that dream characters sometimes resist your lucidity when you're lucid dreaming, when you share your conscious creation practices or dreams or like true awakened awareness with others in the shared dream, if they're not operating from that same framework and they're part of the extension of your awareness, they might be unconsciously taking a similar role, just like those dream characters, resisting your awaken, saying, no, that doesn't make sense. Whether they say it abruptly or they react in a way or they do something that triggers you, that makes perfect sense why Neville would say, don't tell anyone in the shared dream. Not because it automatically blocks something, but even social psychology research shows that people will quickly doubt their own direct experience if it conflicts with group consensus. People will literally doubt their own individual experience if it conflicts with group consensus. We're likely to do that. And so if you're developing authorship awareness, sharing these experiences of what you're creating, what you manifested, what you want to manifest with skeptical others might be like undermining that dream stability that you're building by talking to those characters and being like, are we dreaming? And then they're like, no, it's not. And then you're confused and your lucidity is gone. And it's something that I think we should keep in mind, that experienced lucid dreamers report that maintaining the dream scenes the way that they want absolutely requires what they call a relaxed confidence, but I would upgrade that to nervous system sovereignty. And so we want to get into this balanced place so that we're not energetically putting too much of an emphasis on someone responding the way that we want them to. It's like we maintain that sovereignty, we maintain that lucidity, and with that's part of the reason I think that Neville shared not to tell anyone. They might act like resistant dream characters. Okay. So that was kind of an overview on some of the things. I have so much more that I was trying to research and explore about lucid dreaming, and it was really cool to see in the last couple of years more and more evidence come out of the best practices of it, and then connect it to what Neville said about this dream world that we're all sharing, and see how it applies and experimenting. I see that some of us have had some lucid experiences or connecting some dots in the chat, which is super cool. If anyone has any questions, thoughts, comments, you know where to find me on Discord. And actually, let me check in with Josiah. Josiah, do you have anything you want me to share or remind the group? All good? Okay. Fantastic. Ariel says, what happens in lucid moments stays within lucid aware spaces. You're saying that? I'll be honest with you guys. I've had to do that recently. I realized that I was like, okay, not because they're muggles, that's not what I'm saying, but I'm like, I need to have my in-group now of like my safe spaces, because I'm gaining lucidity. I'm not going to be shaky here. And I'm gaining lucidity. I'm not going to go to the dream characters. If they do, I only want to share those that share the state with me of the framework that we're living here. Everyone else, they can get a version of me, but a version that's playing along with the storyline. But yeah. Kathy says, does Neville have specific lessons on dreaming? He has a ton of lectures about dreaming. And when I think he was incredibly skilled. While he was doing astral projection, he was traveling to different worlds, using consciousness and, consciousness in different realms. I mean, he's doing all kinds of different things. So he did speak of dreams frequently. He talked about all kinds of visions that he experienced. And he might have spoken to some of this, but not called it lucid dreaming. So why don't I also put that in on my list of things I'd love to chat about in this series? What did Neville say about dreams, and how does that tie to what we know now about lucid dreaming? I can nearly guarantee that there's so much overlap, so much juice to extract when looking into that. Yes, I can take a look at that for sure. All right, everybody. Thank you for your wonderful time today. Have a wonderful weekend and rest of your morning, day, evening, depending on wherever you are. And I'll talk to you all soon.
You have just explored another layer of the dream. If it stirred something in you, don't rush to wake up. Let the symbols, the questions, the recognitions keep echoing. To integrate what you're discovering, join the School of Imagination on Discord. You'll find community, prompts, and the live voice stage where these episodes unfold. And if you're ready to go deeper into simulation mastery, state authorship, and the metaphysical training that rewires your reality, Brave Mystic training is now enrolling. Link in the description. Until next time, stay lucid, stay soft, stay sovereign. This is DreamLogic.